We came across this one military officer who was drunk, wasted, and he just looked at me and he was swaying. Aggression on his face was serious, and he growled at me. He just went, like he just, hated seeing me right there and then. Had his gun, and the strap was over his shoulder, and he was sort of holding me at gunpoint.
What's your one drive for doing this? Is it just pure excitement, or is it something else? What is it?
Yeah, I would say it's curiosity.
For the world?
For the world and for myself. I bet you 9 times out of 10, most people visualize the highs and, waving the flag or crossing the finish line. Whereas I'll flip that. I'll be the total opposite. I'll visualize every single bad thing that can possibly go wrong.
All right, Ash Dykes, welcome to Boardman Podcast.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, mate.
I'm going to dive straight in and just ask.
Straight for the questions.
Straight in. Why do you do what you do?
Yeah.
And how did you start?
Oh, wow. How long do you want the answer? How short do you want the answer to be? I can go on. 16, 17 age, I was in high school. And from high school, I then went to college. It was college where I was doing an outdoor education course. And this was all in Wales on the coast, Wales, a small town called Altai, no one really knows of. And in that course, I realized I was a kinesthetic learner, learned through hands-on practical experience rather than being sat in the classroom and sort of looking at the teacher write shit down on the board. I just didn't learn that way. I needed to,
So what's that? You just pick things up by physical?
Yeah, by trying things.
Just visuals and
making
practical
mistakes, learning from that, trying never to make the same mistake twice and just go from there. But it was only on that college course because there was a lot of sort of physical attributes that you needed that I realized this. And then all of the rest of the students were sort of going on to the military after that or going on to university. And I was completely lost. I had no idea. I know I was working in a fish and chip shop. I was working as a waiter, and then I moved and became a lifeguard, just sort of saving up the money. But I knew from that age that I wanted to travel and sort of grow and learn and develop myself through different experiences I would have traveling. But that was a lot easier said than done. My parents weren't going to give me money and say, oh, have fun. I needed to work like 240 hours a month. I bought myself a little bicycle. I cycled to and from work every day. And whilst sort of the rest of the students were in the military or in university, I was just lifeguarding, eventually raised the money and set off. And that's when things really started to sort of get interesting from then on. Lots of illegal adventures, dangerous, fucking reckless.
How old are you now?
I'm 32 now.
Right, okay. Yeah, you don't look that old. You've done a lot for
I like that. That's
for
good,
your age.
In chronological order, what were the sort of 3 or 4? Obviously, we know about some of them, like with China and the ones that have been publicised. What are the ones that stick in your mind, the ones that people would understand what you're about and what you do?
I would say it's the latest 3 world records were the most known. That was sort of the first person to walk solo and unsupported across Mongolia.
Wow.
1,500 miles, and it took 78 days to complete. The next was Madagascar, 1,600 miles, 155 days to complete. That journey was intense. I was sort of held up at gunpoint by the military. I contracted the deadliest strain of malaria. I was sort of machete in hand, hacking through the jungle, hunting, gathering.
This is all in Madagascar?
Bandits or Madagascar. Yeah, so those stories kind of went out there. But the most recent one, I'd say the biggest, was it was a Nat Geo show. It was Guinness World Record. It obviously pulled me onto the Joe Rogan podcast, and that was a 4,000-mile journey following the course of the Yangtze River, one of the largest rivers in the world, and it took me 352 days to complete.
Wow.
I mean, that one was intense.
I was going to say, you say unsupported, so that means there's nobody with you, but do you have to get in touch with the government and the country's association to be right, I'm going to be doing this.
You did.
So I'm going to be by myself sort of thing. So.
Yeah, you did with China. So China wasn't a solo and unsupported. That was just a legitimate, you have to complete this by any means possible, but you have to walk it. So I had to carry a tracking device that sets off a beacon every 5 minutes, 24/7 for the full 352 days. Mm-hmm. And then it took Guinness Book of Records, I think 2.5, 3 months, because they were going through every little yellow beacon to make sure I didn't jump on the back end of a bicycle, even down to the river crossings. So if I needed to get to the other side of it, like a tributary,
you're going through the river.
I would need to not use the flow of the river, otherwise I could be disqualified. Wow. So if I did accidentally use the flow of the river, I would need to walk back on myself a couple of 100 meters and then continue.
So just to get them in order, the first one, right? It's early in the morning, but it's 78 So 1,500. So you did 200 miles a day. Is that right?
No, what was that? That was 1,500 miles, 78 days to complete.
Sorry, I'm doing the maths wrong. 10 would be 75, so 20 miles a day.
It was probably averaging about 20 miles a day. Yeah.
What by what form?
Walking.
Oh, so you walked a whole marathon every single day?
Pretty much.
For 78 days?
And not only that, because it was solo and unsupported, I was pulling a trailer that weighed 18 stone, 120 kilograms behind me, carrying everything that I needed to survive. Because you're right with what you said. When I say unsupported, I don't mean, because I know that there's a lot of people that do this. They say unsupported and they've got a van following like a certain distance from them.
They've got like a media team.
Yeah, none of that. My insurance, I'm not allowed to say this. It was semi-illegal. My insurance was invalid. That expedition, I'll be brutally honest, cost me no more than $5,000. I had no money. I was a Muay Thai fighter, scuba diving instructor in Thailand. I moved back to Wales to pursue Mongolia, but I had to move in with my parents. I didn't have any money for a gym membership, so my uncle dropped me off a tractor tire, and all of the training for that legitimate world record was done in my back garden. Wow. So when I went out there, I couldn't afford no fucking helicopter evacuation. The last guy who had attempted was a sort of soldier, a desert explorer. He failed on all 3 occasions.
Wow. That's quite good, because that would have raised your awareness to not make any mistakes.
Yeah,
or not
fully.
Your awareness would,
Yeah, it put me off at first. Right. I remember like looking into this guy, and I was just, as I said, living on an island, I was 22 years of age. This guy was nails, he was hardcore. He'd crossed the Sahara before now. And I thought, what chance do I have?
Yeah.
And so I did genuinely start looking at a safer country to hike across at first.
So that's 78, so 20, so doing a marathon every single day for 78 days, like we see a lot of, David Goggins.
Yeah.
What would it be like comparative to what he's doing?
I would say you've got 2 different ways to put it. Yes, you've got the running, and you've got the pain that comes with that. You've got the blisters, you've got the chafing, you've got the toenails that do fall off.
Yeah.
But the difference between what I do and what he does, correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess at the end of his marathon, he gets to go home, he gets maybe shelter, he gets to have a shower, he gets to...
Yeah.
Whereas I'm out there fully. I have to avoid wolves that stalk me. I have to address my blisters during sort of you being hit by snow blizzards in the Altai Mountains or sandstorms in the desert, and it's relentless. So this was, to break it down, 3 weeks over the Altai Mountains, where it's minus 15 degrees Celsius, it's over 3,000 meters altitude, and there are wolves and snow blizzards. Then you break into the Gobi Desert, and that is 5 weeks solo walking through the Gobi Desert, relying on wells and hoping that they're not dry or locked, whereby you can get water from that. And then another 3 weeks through the Mongolian steppes.
And you're camping and preparing your own food and everything.
You've just got a tent with you, and you've got ration packs with you. You've got everything in the trailer, enough to survive. And that's what made it.
That's incredible.
You've never been to these places before, so you're having to set up camp, but find the best spot for you to think, right, this is going to be the safest option for me.
I want to know more about each experience, but why are you doing this? What's your like one drive for doing this? Is it just pure excitement, or is it something else? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I would say it's curiosity
for the world,
and for myself. Yeah.
Right.
Curious, because again, when I was younger, I kind of knew that as guys, we need to face adversity. I think people in general, they mold and they grow and they develop through facing hard times, difficult times. They overcome that, and then life doesn't hit you as hard. And so I kind of realized that as a young age. But I also realized that life goes by fast. Even at the age of 16, 17, I was realizing I need to make the most of this one life that I've got.
It's incredibly smart, man, to be like that.
Yeah,
have that mindset at that age.
Right?
Yeah.
I think it was, I was onto something, and I didn't quite know what, because, there was a lot of sort of foolishness behind it as well, foolhardiness, recklessness. But I kind of wanted to get out there, grow, develop myself, throw myself into either embarrassing situations, see how I react, dangerous situations, see how I overcome them. But also that curiosity and love for the world. I love meeting new people. I love having conversations. I love learning about different sort of cultures and traditions. And I think this tied in all together, it brings on these sort of missions and expeditions that I do.
Just go out and explore.
You must have had like a really, I don't know what your day-to-day, but I can't imagine you're walking every day 20 miles and on Instagram and everything. Like, you must have had a really great mental stability to kind of, take you on those journeys. And you, like you said, you're very much on your own. Yeah. Like, did that help your mental, like, stability, or did it trigger something else new that wasn't there before? Like, what did it do for you?
Yeah, it's
mentally?
a good question. Yeah, I'd say there's pros and cons with that, with sort of being on.
Because you know what they say, thinking too much is also a bad thing. You know? Right?
Exactly. Yeah, and so before Mongolia, with all of the previous adventures, I wasn't on any social media, so I was just doing it for the pure love and the passion. It was only when I figured, because I didn't know Mongolia was a world record at first. It was only when I figured about 4 months into planning that it was a world record. I was kind of like, maybe I can make something of this. Maybe this could be a potential career because there's not many firsts left in the world,
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so I thought, if I'm going to be doing that, I need to sort of look more on the business side now, kind of tie in the adventure with the entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I was then looking at social media. But with Mongolia, yeah, you're right, there was no signal. I wasn't on my phone until I got to a city, which could be 2 weeks before you get to a city. What? And then you're only there for like a day, and then you're on social media, or you're not, it depends. Because I wasn't really sharing, I didn't really know what to do, how to share the journey. But then, you've got the pros of it, like the Yangtze, where you're fully connected in China. There's better signal there in the wilderness and the mountains than there is in North Wales. So you're fully connected.
What do you prefer? Because obviously, I'd love to disappear for a flipping month or two and just completely go off social media. Did you prefer having that connection to people, or did you just go, do you know what? It's just me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm so in the middle. Right. I'm so in the middle.
You enjoy both.
I really enjoy sort of cutting off all social media, because you can't avoid it nowadays, and just sort of being out there. I think I went over 8 days without seeing a single person as well. So it wasn't the fact that I was off social media, I was also not seeing any other human being,
Any human interaction.
And so that's weird. And of course, I love that human interaction. So it made it special that when I did come across my first person, after 8 days, it was like, whoa, and I couldn't stop talking.
That's
they
crazy.
couldn't understand because of the language barrier, But there were also pros as to being on social media, whereby I felt like it wasn't just me having the experience on my own. It was kind of like I was sharing the experience, sharing these stories and photos and videos. And off the back of that came lots of opportunities and benefits. One of them being malaria, which I'm sure we'll come onto that story where I'll share that then.
I want to talk about your family and how you've had no interaction with them on your expedition. So how did you find, was there a suffering in that where you were like, right, I'm missing my family, I'm missing companionship, I want to get in touch with the people that love me and are worried about me. So was there anything that made you feel like, right, okay, I'm going to get to the next checkpoint and then touch base, or there was just no contact back home?
No, there was contact. I would always try to reach out where I could. Yeah, Mongolia was the hardest because there was barely any signal. Madagascar was a little bit better, and then China was better again. And you're right, it was sometimes when I was out in the wild, just feeling vulnerable as shit. You avoided bears, you've been stalked by wolves for 2 days. And I remember breaking out of that and waving goodbye to a videographer friend who had joined me. And I was back to being alone, having faced all of that, still feeling vulnerable, still out in the wild. And when I started thinking about my family and friends, it's strange because I think a lot of people think it's the big experiences and big things that you do now that create the strongest memories. But when I was out there in the mountains, it was the simplest of things. It was the sake of being just in a household with my family, even if we're not all talking, we're just doing our own thing. We're warm, we've got shelter,
just
we've
home
got
comforts,
everything, everyone's safe, everyone's there. And there's that sort of warmth feeling that hits you when you're out in the wild and you realize, wow, it's crazy that they're the memories that you think about the most, rather than doing the world's highest bungee jump or going to this high kudos event, or it's not that. And so I get what people mean when you're on your deathbed. It's not sort of the money that you made or the career that you achieved. It's those simple things. And many times I did face near-death experiences.
They say it's
rings
like,
true.
They say it's like not when you're about to die, you don't remember the early nights that you had. It's like all the crazy things you did. So that was the first one. Then the second one, you contracted malaria, right? Right, but were you taking the malaria tablets?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a weird story how this happened. So it was a 5-month journey, and only 1 month into the 5-month journey, we rocked up to a community in the south of Madagascar that actually was suffering with the bubonic plague. Wow. This ancient disease. And I was warned that there is still the plague in Madagascar. So as we approached, they said they were very hospitable, but there was this really low, eerie energy about the community. And they'd recently lost a few relatives to the plague. So they said, stay in the tent, we'll bring food to you and water. Because there was lots of sort of animals around and fleas and the plague.
And was that sanitized, like the stuff that they're bringing you?
No, it's just a small sort of very remote community in the middle of sort of South Madagascar.
God.
And so we stayed in our tent. We were exhausted, big day. I think it was that day that we had to scramble away from a bushfire, literally had to run. So we just wanted to get our head down and collapse. And they brought over this bowl of food and it was rice and eel, but the eel smelled a little bit funky. But we weren't sure. I had eaten eel before, but this one didn't smell the best. But me and my guides, we were fucking hungry. We were eating that damn food, and so we got stuck in. And then
eel. That's like my worst.
It's not even the fact it's just eel. He said it didn't even look good.
Didn't even smell good. Yeah,
that's that was it.
So we ate that, and the next day, all three of us were suffering. We had severe diarrhea.
Yeah.
And so I think the malaria pills that we were taking
came straight.
Pretty much, yeah. So we didn't have the full dose protecting
so
us.
The malaria tablets came out in the diarrhea, and then that's how you
and then I think malaria got a hold of me. It was pure unluck because the chances are just crazy. Got a hold of me, and for the next 4 or 5 days, I was actually walking with malaria, with falciparum. There's 4 different strains of malaria. You've got 3 which are weaker strains, but they can remain dormant in your system, like you've got it forever. But you've got the deadliest called falciparum. And it usually kills you within 24 hours.
No way.
But it's the only one that you can completely eradicate out of your system.
Right.
So I put the positive spin, like, yes, unfortunately, I got the deadliest, but it's out of my system for me. And I did just about, I don't know how, I think lasting 5 days was just because my body was so used to sort of pushing itself, and I still had the anti-malaria pills. There was still some dose in there protecting me.
Okay.
And by the time I made it to a community, it had overland transport. They sort of took me to a city, and the doctor came out. At this point, I was delusional, sort of hallucinating. I just collapsed on the bed, just saw heads spinning above me. It was the doctors taking my blood, and they came back and they said if you were 3 hours later, you would have slipped into a coma and potentially died. Did
any of your guides have malaria as well?
Yeah, and one of the guides called Me, his name is Me, it always got confusing, Me and Me. He had the malaria that remains dormant in your system. Right. So every few years, it triggers in him.
Got it.
Wow.
What does it do to him?
I think it just feels like severe flu, is how he explained it.
How's it passed on, the malaria, to him?
Mosquitoes.
So I was reading that, like, mosquitoes, I remember when I lived in Bali for a year.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody was scared of dengue fever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no dengue, some people call it dengue, but there's no vaccine for it, right? There's no sort of, and apparently they call it like the bone breaker disease, and the second time you get it can kill you. So I started reading up on mosquitoes, and apparently they kill 1 million people a year. It's like and it's mainly malaria. It's like the biggest killer in the world.
Yeah,
I heard about that. Mosquitoes are the biggest killer in the world. They think it's all this crazy stuff. It's mosquitoes.
Yeah, because they did. It wasn't that video as well in Africa. Like, what do you think the most dangerous thing is in Africa? And it was like naming hippo, buffalo,
lion, tigers,
and then it fucking came out as mosquitoes. Yeah, kills the most.
Does the sort of like adversity, like the peak and the trough of all this, like, you know, the highs and the lows of what you have, like, does it prepare you in a much better way for normal, like, emotional life?
Yeah, it does for sure. I think through the different sort of adversities that I've faced, I've come back here, and things that hit me that seemed like a big deal at the time, I'm able to just sort of disappear in my mind to the jungles of Madagascar, where I've got spider bites that have infected, where I'm pulling 7 leeches off my body, flicking them out the tent, ready for a night's sleep. I'm kind of like, this isn't so bad.
So not there. You've got a really good light to you, and I can see you appreciate the moments of being around people, which is nice.
Yeah.
And people, you can see that from people straight away, whether they enjoy that or not.
So on a practical level, like if you've got mental things going on, right, in your head, it's not this sort of like deep underlying thing that you know what you've like achieved. It's more the fact that you're remembering these pictures of places you've been, and that's such a more visceral, powerful experience than whatever the negative emotion is that you're experiencing. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's interesting. We need more of those experiences then.
And it's almost like...
You need one of those experiences, not more. Can you give us one? Can you prepare? Can you give us something to do after this, Ash? Like something that's not like...
This, what can you do?
Luxury.
Well, you're into...
Like drinking flat whites and green juices.
Yeah, there you go. Nailed it. I was
this poor guy on that's done all this stuff, and we're here like with ginger shots with a bit of honey in them and all this stuff. Like, what would you like, Ash?
He asked for like a skinny latte at the coffee shop.
Going through near-death experiences, and we can't even box in the shop.
I ask because I think I'm getting close. I'm sitting at that point where I'm traveling a lot on my own. And I'm at that point where I'm like, right, I'm just going to do something like completely outside of my comfort zone and just completely like, there's not in the norm of my own sort of space.
Yeah.
But it's nice having you here, knowing that that's had a positive impact on you.
Yeah, for sure. And you do your martial arts. I'd say boxing. I come from a Muay Thai background. I'd fight the locals in Thailand for money to pay rent. And that, I think, really.
Wait there, you were fighting with the.
I saw one of the fights. I was like, really?
Cool.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I loved it.
When was that? Was that before the last 3 world records?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that almost helped me to prepare mentally for Mongolia because I was like, if I can't beat this Thai guy, fuck those wolves. It was like I need to be.
Mate, I'm trying to get Jay and James to start fighting, but they just.
Well, actually, no. Muay Thai is what I been trained in. That's my background. These guys are boxing. So the last couple of years, I've been moving over to boxing. My love is Muay Thai for sure.
Yeah, right.
And I saw you. I saw one of your fights. It was very, very good.
Yeah.
Are you doing any more or no?
I'm not. I do go to Thailand next week.
Okay.
Actually, so I'll be getting in more to the scuba dive and the Muay Thai.
Okay.
Go to AKA Thailand. Mike Swick over there. So he's got a great setup there. So yeah, can't wait for that.
Did you have any near-death experiences with any other animals? You talked about wolves and being hunted by bears and all this sort of stuff. And were there any specific moments that you thought, shit, there's actually a wolf chasing me? And was that?
There were many. There was a bear one where we woke up and there were fresh bear prints in the morning right on the track that we were following. And so that was scary because we kind of went out there with that sort of Western mentality of you leave the birds alone and the birds will leave you alone. No, they fucking won't. They will eat you if they're hungry.
They're tracking scent.
They're predators and they're the best at it. And I think if there's any animal that I fear the most, it's definitely the bear.
I was going to say, I would be scared of a bear more
than a wolf. You can't do with its fur, what?
Yeah.
You're not going to do anything.
Especially the size of their paws.
Yeah, and some of these locals
You've seen The Revenant, right?
Fuck that. Some of the locals would present me with a knife, and I'm like, look, thank you.
What am I going to do?
But what's this going to do to a bear?
Like a little shank.
Yeah. And it was more that the stories from the locals that scared me the most. Because I said, I've got a whistle. I'll be loud to make sure that they're aware that I'm coming, and they'll disappear. Because you do usually attack if they're like.
Do you have to attack as well when they? Have you been taught that?
With those, you can play dead. It's the black bears that you've got to fight for your life.
You got to play dead.
Yeah, and
but they're just still, fucking you over, scratching you up,
as if you can, you about. With the adrenaline, as if you can.
It's mind-boggling because it's so interesting, but at the same time, it's like I imagine those locals, you turning up, You're a white boy that looks completely Western, big smile, like, hey, I'm gonna go walk in the jungle. They must have just thought, this guy's gone.
Yeah,
they must have just thought that's it.
We're
gonna find his body next week or something crazy.
Yeah, and that actually went on in my mind as well. I almost lost my life in the Gobi Desert, and I was walking past camel carcasses, thinking, if I die out here in the Gobi, I wonder how long it'll be, and I wonder who comes across.
So what's killed the camels, or is it just
dehydration?
You're walking past it. And the camel's gone.
Yeah, and it's gone. I'm in the desert, oh my God.
You remember that on your deathbed, man, walking through the dead camels.
And the camel's good for rehydrating itself as well. So if a camel can't survive, how the fuck
I know. And the Gobi sort of keeps expanding as well, so it's getting harder. Even like the wildebeest in Africa, it's getting harder for them to sort of hydrate themselves because it's expanding. They're going longer distance ever before without water. But with that Gobi Desert trip, I mapped confirmed water sources and unconfirmed water source. And after 5 weeks of hiking, I was at this point really dehydrated. I was slowly becoming more sort of delirious. I could feel my organs almost drying up. And then I came across a well which was dry, and it was unconfirmed. It was at that point I had drunk more water than anticipated. I was kind of like, oh, fuck. And I had 4 more days to the next community to get water. So I had to ration the last remaining dribbles of water that I had on my trailer, and I was in absolute agony. And it was at that point, I was the first near death that I thought, if I don't keep getting up from out of my trailer, because I was trying to hide from the sun, I'm going to die out here in the desert. And it was that sort of realization, almost shock of capture, where at first I was feeling sorry for myself. I was thinking of my family and my friends. And then I realized I had missed the point of backup because my logistics manager was in the capital. So I'd need to text him and then allow at least 3 to 4 days for him to get to me, and then another 2 days to get me out. And I didn't believe I could survive 6 days. So my only option was to walk out of that scenario. Because like I said, invalid insurance, didn't have the helicopter pickup, none of that.
Did you have any moments where like that, you just burst down into tears and just thought, what the fuck am I doing?
It was almost
and you actually stopped? Because, you know, there's one thing where you go, right, I've got to keep going to survive. But at the same time, you must have just thought, you know what, I'm just going to stop here and just cry my eyes out.
You know, it was, I know what you mean. It was almost like I didn't even have the energy to do that.
Right.
It was almost like I was really sort of frustrated, but then I could feel myself getting worked up and angry, and I could almost feel my body getting hotter. So I had to be so in tune with my body because
How much did you not drink to get to that point, right? Because let's go back to us idiots for a sec. Like, if I don't have a certain amount of water a day, I'm like, oh, I'm dehydrated.
Yeah.
And you can feel like you feel a bit shit.
You were panicking last night. You said, I need water.
Yeah, no, I did need water because I hadn't drank much water in the day. So you do, and you can feel like people get dehydration and it's not great. You go to hospital and they say, look, you just need water on IV.
Yeah.
But what level did you go to? Because you said the last 4 days you had like this much water. So it's a really, really tiny amount. What can the body get away with?
Well, they do say you can survive, 3 days without water?
Yeah.
But I think that that's in a normal environment. I don't think that's in the Gobi whilst pulling 120 kilograms.
Yeah.
And so it was almost this, I felt very desperate. It was almost painful. It was a sense of being desperate, the pain and the panic. It was a case of holy shit, because there's a time limit. It was almost like if you're scuba diving in a cave and then you're lost and then you're just watching your oxygen tank empty and you're like, I've got 5 minutes left. It was almost like that, but in an extended version. Yeah. And then I really had to try not to panic. I then had to stop thinking about my family and fucking feeling sorry for myself. And I worked that I only have one option. And I'm a big believer of sort of like, visualization. I can see myself getting here if I apply this method. But 4 days, I just couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
So what I did is I broke it down into 100 meters. So I pictured I visualized a feature point 100, 200 meters away.
Just small steps.
Small steps, would get to that, and then I would hide under my trailer for 5 minutes. And then after 5 minutes, because normally I was hiding for an hour, and it was that stuff that would have killed me because I would have gone longer without water. And then I would take a bit of this water, which was now hot water. So it wasn't, but it didn't matter. I would take this hot water.
And I bet all you want to do is just down it.
Yeah, I just wanted to collapse. And I would just wanted to down it. And it wasn't even that appetizing either because it was hot. Everything around me was hot. Everything was melting. And I was just like, this is awful. But by breaking it down 100 meters in 5 minutes, I just about made it to a community.
That was your sort of fight or flight moment where you're thinking, right, these little checkpoints can allow you to think, right, this is positive steps now. I'm getting out of this.
Yeah.
It's incredibly calculated as a human what you actually thought about, because we've had loads of people on this podcast. We've had the strongest people in the world. We've had Eddie Hall, and we like to consider ourselves being man as in the strength of going to the gym and lifting weights, and what you've done is like a completely different. It's survival. It's calculated. It's maths. It's like the positioning of what you can do, but you also got to be strong mentally, physically, emotionally. Like it's pretty incredible.
Yeah,
man.
it's overwhelming, and it's all of this sort of stuff that I feared at the beginning, especially Mongolia was my first big trip. Yes, I'd done plenty of sort of reckless trips before that, but Mongolia was the one where I'd be alone. Again, a soldier had attempted 3 times, and I was kind of like, I don't know what it's going to be like to face wolves. I don't know what I'm going to be like in isolation or sand blizzards or dehydration. And I had nightmares after nightmares. But I do believe it comes with, I think fear comes as a package deal with doubt, right? I think you often fear something you're not sure that you can overcome, or maybe you don't simply understand it. Whereas the way to eradicate doubt is by experience. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to experience all of these little adventures. So if I was to attempt Mongolia without the previous stuff, I would have definitely died. And then same again, if I attempted Yangtze without Mongolia or Madagascar experience, it wouldn't have been done. Wow. I think it was building up those track habits, climbing that ladder with whatever we do with any career. We're always sort of climbing that ladder, starting from the bottom and getting your body used to it mentally and physically. So that when my body then faced malaria, at first I thought it was dehydration because I didn't know what I contracted. But it was like my body had been here before. And so maybe that's why it was able to last 5 days.
Strong enough to,
Yeah, because it was kind of like, we know what to do here, you know.
So the third one was, where was it, Ash? Sorry.
Was the Yangtze River in China.
Okay.
So there's the third longest river in the world after the Nile and the Amazon.
Okay. And how far is it? How long did you do?
It's 4,000 miles.
What did you do? How did you traverse it?
Again, hiking.
4,000 miles?
4,000 miles walking.
And how long did it take you?
That's like from here to America, so you could walk over the Atlantic, right?
Yeah. And so that was, so you've got the source of the Yangtze in the Tibetan Plateau at 5,100 meters, which is similar to Mount Everest base camp.
Sounds great, Tibetan Plateau.
Yeah, it was great up there, stunning, really wild. If you want to know what the world looked like thousands of years ago, I reckon Tibet and Mongolia are those places.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, just like no one for days, you know?
Really?
Yeah.
You can actually go there and there's just been nobody there?
No one.
Man, that must have been so good.
Yeah.
The altitude must have really affected you as well.
The altitude, fucked everyone up.
Yeah. Just
we-
breathing less.
Yeah,
Less
yeah, yeah.
oxygen.
We lost 4 members before we even got to the start point. They had to abandon the trip, altitude sickness, fear of wildlife, injury. And then after, how long was it? I'm sure it was after the first month or two, maybe it was 6 weeks, I had lost 10 members of the 16 different members that joined me at different areas. Like
There's just 2 left now.
You lost them to death or to lost them to
No, I didn't. Yeah, sorry, no. No. You're right. Yeah. And if they stayed with me, they could have potentially died.
Right. Wow.
But I bought a Tibetan guy who was good at altitude, and I brought him with me, especially for the source, because if I got altitude sickness, I've got someone to get me off the mountains. He got altitude sickness. I had to get him off the mountains.
Wow.
And then my film crew left, and they've ditched this donkey with us. So we've got this donkey. We decided to put our rucksacks onto the donkey. We're walking 2.5 weeks once my guide had recovered with altitude sickness, with this donkey sort of through the wilderness of Tibet, pulled in by the police 5 different occasions because it was like, what the fuck are you doing here? And this is where it took critical planning. This took 2 years to plan. We needed, I don't know if I should say all of this, but we needed 14 different signed and stamped documents. They needed to make me temporary doctor for a year. I needed to become ambassador for one of the organizations, which then granted me access to the Three Sources National Park. We then worked with the government to be able to carry all of this satellite technology. Because I was carrying literal beacon systems that I would point to the sky and then boom, I've got internet and satellite phone, which is illegal, but the government approved it. Right. And so these Tibetan officers would pull us in, leave the horse in the tent there, rock up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning, just because that's how long it would take for them to get to us from when a local had reported us to the police. And they would drive us 5-6 hours back to their sort of government officers and question us. And we'd have these documents and they'd be like, why have you got satellite? What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Some sort of spy or something.
Yeah. And the first time I was pulled in, I remember they threatened me with deportation. I was like, you've got, after 2 years planning, and already they're like, we're going to deport you. And it's like, it's day number 3. I still got, 3
Did someone prepare you for that and said you will be stopped?
They did. Yeah. A bit too much. My parents were really worried with this one. Because you do hear of people just go missing,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How many of you were there then? So there was... It
was just me attempting the record.
Right.
And so as part of that, we were filming for National Geographic. So I needed film crew to fly in at different locations.
Right.
So at the beginning, there was 4 of us, but we didn't make it to the source. And so I had to go back to a nearby city. The guys recovered and I got a stronger team sent out. And then there was 3 of us with a donkey. We walked for 2.5 weeks, and then there were different people along the first sort of 6 weeks that joined. But they would be flying in, and they were coming straight up to altitude. They weren't sort of working themselves up, so they would be strapped to this big tank, oxygen tank in hospital. And it's a case of, look, you need to go home.
So how high? What was the altitude? Do you know what it was in feet or meters?
It was just over 5,100 meters, which is over 15,000 feet.
Right. Okay. So we're not comparative now to a ski slope, right? Which is a few thousand. So that's really high. Obviously, lack of oxygen there is a lot, and you're doing a lot of exercise as well.
Were you the only one that did it as well? Were you the only one that completed it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you take oxygen when you were there, or would you take elevation tablets?
No, I would have if I needed to.
Yeah.
But I felt my body was just adjusting quite nicely because I was sort of organically going higher and higher, rather than these guys who would fly from Beijing, straight there. And done. You're done.
Wow. So
mate, you've walked 4,000. That's just incredible.
It was crazy,
and it took you 300, how many days?
It took 352, but...
So it took you a year?
I could have done it a lot quicker.
Right.
With this, it was a lot bigger news in China than it was. So I was doing book signings, I was doing presentations, I was working with brands. We launched, Jet Li, the martial artist.
Yeah.
We launched his clothing range, co-branded range with Adidas and GQ.
Oh, wow.
So it was lots of these events. So if you were to get rid of that, I would have smashed it a lot quicker.
I love Jet Li. So cool.
Yeah.
And that's, so you had was that when your book was coming out at the same time? Or was it?
That was a year or two after. That was a year into it being translated into Mandarin.
Yeah.
So I was signing the Mandarin versions going across the country, which was really cool. Journalists there, different cities that I would come up to, they'd be really throwing events and making me feel welcome.
And just for everyone watching and listening, your book's available everywhere? Was it called?
Yeah,
it's available
Mission Possible.
Mission Impossible.
Mission Possible.
Mission Possible.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just because everyone was saying, especially Mongolia, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Because if you're on a boat or if you're in a car, you're saying, right, I've seen Mexico because I've driven through nearly all of Mexico.
Right.
But you're driving pretty quick.
Yeah.
And if you're on a boat, you go pretty quick. And it's if you're walking, you're taking everything in at such a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because you're really seeing it. So not many people would have seen, hardly anybody, well, nobody would have seen Tibet the way that you've seen it. Which is a really good way to take everything in slowly.
Yeah.
Key to a lot of things, I think, is we all rush around so quick. To try and do it in a slower manner and take that must be amazing.
Yeah, it is. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to go back to China. Because when I first left for travels at age 19, I went to China. That was the first location.
Right.
And I went to Beijing, Shanghai, Hong Kong, and then straight to Southeast Asia. And when I look back at China and how big it is on the map and noticed that we just were on the coast, I was like, I've not traveled China. I need to go back and do it.
Can I ask you a question about China?
So I have one as well.
Yeah.
Probably the same one.
Probably the same one, yeah. So I've not been to China. You hear a lot in the media, and I don't obviously can't listen to anything that you hear in mainstream media.
Yeah.
But the word is that it's a communist-run society, or socialism and communism, and that everybody's very much controlled what they do. There's CBDCs and central bank currencies and lots of control from the government of the public. Did you see that?
I'm joking. Yeah.
Just starts talking Chinese like no. He's one of them.
I'm just going to switch my phone off and then I can give you the answer.
He works for the government and that. Go back there next week.
Yeah, you do and you don't. So when you're actually there, so when I was there in 2019, I'll break it down like this. I was there 2019 doing the Yangtze and I loved it. It seems that they've got a lot of freedom. From when I first saw, they've got their own social media platforms that are performing better than ours. They've got a Baidu search, which is the equivalent to Google. And, there's this strong sense of community. Everyone's doing Tai Chi by the riverside and, they're doing Kung Fu or they're doing something. And, even the retired, they look like they're having great fun. It's not like they're in their homes with the fire on watching TV.
Institutionalized.
Yeah, they're sort of out. And I then realized, wow, this is actually a pleasant place to be.
Right.
And even my friend, Martin from Wales, he flew over and he thought there would be this sense of suppression.
Yeah.
And he noticed as well, and he said it's not actually a bad place at all.
Okay.
However, I visited again. I recently.
I went back for the second time, and everyone was dead.
I filmed my latest TV show. I got back 3 months ago, and that was a 6-part 1-hour TV show following the Great Wall of China. And it was 2022, but it was still stuck in COVID times of 2020, and that's when I saw that actually if the government wants to do something, they can do it, no questions asked.
Yeah.
And that's when I saw major depression. I saw that there were more lockdown deaths than COVID deaths.
Yeah.
It was was really serious. And that's why I then believed to live there. Not for me. I love the place, I love the people, but just seeing that and watching people have no say, no rioting, people trying to escape their apartment block, and dying, trying to get out. Because they've barricaded it in.
I follow a lot of sort of science stuff on online, and if you follow anything that's happening in China, because they've recreated the sun and they're doing this nuclear fusion experiment, which is one of the best in the world.
Oh, okay.
And all of the Chinese scientists still, in 2023, are wearing masks. So my theory would be, that obviously when you start, like you sometimes now you'll see a kid on the train or in public, like a young kid with their parents, and they'll be wearing a mask still.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, it's probably doing more harm than good, right? We can probably safely say that. So in China, you're like, okay, because they were pushed into it so much, like everybody was.
Yeah.
Are they doing it of their own accord, or is everybody in that room being told to wear a mask?
So with the mask, they would actually wear the mask before COVID hit, just because of air pollution.
Okay.
And so it was much more of a thing there. And especially 10 years ago when I first visited in 2019, that's when the pollution was really bad. It's gotten lots better since.
Right.
But 2010, it was very
That is true.
intense.
Yeah, we've seen that.
Yeah,
before.
and so lots of people were sort of wearing the masks because of that. So I think it's that people have gotten used to it and they're kind of like, well, it prevents me from air pollution and also COVID. So there's more people doing it without actually doing their research.
It sounds like there's positive and negatives. I would edge towards like the positives, because if the government knows what they're doing at least and things are working better, like your social media or your whatever it may be, like if the country's working better, great, have more control.
In times of desperation, then that's where they don't have a say. That's where it gets to the point where
that's it.
It's really tough for them.
That's when you realise that, they don't have a say. They can't even riot. They can't. Whereas we here, we don't like something, we'll take to the streets.
But that's changing. There's anti-riot laws that have been put in place.
Really?
In the UK, there's anti-riot laws where they can set the decibel level, they can set the people that attend, and they can set the time that they take place. Otherwise, they can arrest you.
Whoa.
So that's why they're saying that there is a form of communism coming into England, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think the difference that I've seen with sort of Chinese social media, if you look at, this is the positive, if you look at what kids look at on TikTok in the UK or in America, even though it's being banned, it's normally like silly stuff that's just going to take up their time.
Entertainment clips.
Yeah. If you look at what the kids in China are looking at, it's like maths and physics and understanding it, right? So that's the positive. The negative is that I'm actually getting something built. I'm getting something made in China at the moment. And they have these drones that go outside everybody's house and they fly along and they've got speakers on them. And they were telling everybody to stay home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is kind of scary, right? That they're using that. So you got both sides.
You have, and if you don't see that side and you go as a tourist and you just sort of the lights and they've got a lot of money there and the food's great and people seem happy and jolly, but then you see it in sort of the lockdown times and you're kind of like, wow, okay, I know what people mean. And it's not just these lockdowns; it goes back in history, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was going to be my question on China, because I had have a friend of mine who went there recently, and she said, look, it's completely amazing. It's not what you expect.
Yeah.
But obviously, we've touched on like the political kind of structure side of the country.
Yeah.
What's the other side like? Is it fun? Is it, warm? Like the other side, I suppose, of a tourist just going there.
Yeah.
Because the thing that freaks me out is all the food and the weird like stuff that they eat and stuff like that. It's not weird to them, but it's weird to us. So it's like
they'll eat anything. It's crazy. Yeah.
They do put a lot of this, but it's funny, again, a lot of the videos that tend to go viral, like people eating octopus, it's mainly in Korea that they do that. But because China's such a large part of Asia, they just say, oh, look at the Chinese eating the octopus. So, and it's the same with the dogs, that they eat dogs. There's only one province that eats dog, and that is once a year there's a festival, and it's a tiny province, and the rest of the Chinese hate it because the Chinese love dogs. Not in terms of like having them as a pet. And so the Chinese go crazy at this one province and have tried to overrule this law time and time again. But then the rest of the world are like, fuck China, they're eating dogs. And it's like, no, it's
But it's the same as India. Like India, the national animal there that they don't eat is cow, right? They just like it's like a sacred animal.
Yeah.
Whereas what Shakespeare said, the world is a stage. They can make people think whatever they want.
Yeah.
So I bet it's just a beautiful country.
Yeah.
I bet the majority of people are really nice.
Yeah.
But going out there on a night out is fun. Do you know what I mean? I bet if we went, we'd love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, the nightlife's great. And it's far ahead. They've got some really, really fucking cool stuff happening out in China.
That's what she said. She said it's really far ahead.
Yeah.
It's not behind it.
Yeah,
anymore.
no,
it's like
not
the
at all.
yuan. Didn't the yuan just overtake like the US dollar trading and stuff like that? So
I think probably, I
think in terms of technology as well, they're just so much more advanced. With just inventions and just trialing loads of different things.
Yeah.
Ash, I have a burning question. You've built this what I would say a really great brand and image now of what you can do. That's not considered not possible.
Yeah.
I kind of want to say what's next, but also what's like the one thing now that you go, right, if I had all the preparation for that, that's the one thing I want to do, which is like completely next level up of what you've done. Is there something?
There is.
You mentioned the scuba diving and the whole idea of water and submerging yourself is really interesting to me. But is there something that you're planning? Is there something 10 years in the future where you, I don't know, I feel like you're just going to walk to the moon or some crazy shit. Like, is there something that you're planning which is a level up?
Yeah, got you. So there's nothing right now that I'm planning just because I've got back and we're sort of getting this TV show ready. Mm-hmm. And then once that airs, I want to get straight to the channels and, present them with new ideas. But there is one. I don't think I'll do it because it takes a lot of time, a lot of resources, and it's semi-suicidal, which I obviously don't want to die. But I think the greatest expedition, the greatest world first, I think, over the next 100 years would be to walk the entire length of the Congo River. No one's ever done it. It's the most dangerous river in the world.
Where's the Congo River?
In Africa.
Right.
Yeah, so it's the heart of Africa.
In the Congo.
The Congo, it's brutal.
Like,
there.
is it the whole of Africa? Is it the south? Is it like
it's central?
Okay.
So you've got sort of Africa's like that. It's kind of like this big part of Central Africa,
and walk the whole way.
Then you've got the river. It's like the 5th longest in the world. Yeah. But I think someone's going to do that one day, and whoever does it, that is going, without a doubt, that has got to be one of the greatest firsts,
and the most
at
dangerous
least the past decade, I think. For sure.
Yeah. Talk us through that. Why is it
unbelievable? Like amounts of
the wildlife. Dangers. The jungle is so dense. Like I faced jungle in Madagascar that I could only cover 2 kilometers in a whole 14 days of walking. Because the jungle was so dense, I was sort of hacking through with the machete. It's going to be way denser in the Congo. Right. And there's like a large part. You've got all of the snakes, the cats, you've got the hippos, you've got diseases that are coming out of the Congo. Often new diseases that are found, new species. You've got cannibals still.
Surely if you prepare, like you've done these stuff where you've done it completely on your own.
Yeah.
Did you hear that? Cannibals.
What, people that just eat people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would probably come across new communities that haven't been discovered yet. There's
all
still
these
some
different
out there
tribes that you're going to be seeing as well. Like,
but can't you do that proper plan, like take a gun and shit like that, or not? No.
You would need security. Right. I was planning that at the same time I was planning the Yangtze.
Your guy from Malta, Ross.
Oh, right. Yeah. Security guard. Yeah, he's from South Africa.
Yeah. Do you know, we just saw this guy, you must have seen him on YouTube. He's a YouTuber.
Yeah.
He went out and he met a tribe that's never seen humans before. Did you see that?
Was that my video? Maybe.
No.
Yeah, that was the latest one that I posted.
No, he seemed like this. No, he seemed like this like crazy.
It's really nice
Aussie guy.
Aussie, yeah, no. Then
was it? What did you come up against a new tribe?
Yeah.
So did you have to like?
Seemed like this really nice white guy with short hair.
Why did you not ask about that?
You had to like literally like. Almost like, I come in peace. You have to acclimatise yourself with their tradition.
I want to know about this tribe. Yeah. Where was it? How many people did you meet?
Yeah.
They've never seen any humans before.
Yeah, that's what I was told through translation by my guide. So we came across, the first community that we came across was towards the south of Madagascar, and they were keeping their distance. They were like far away. They were all looking over the sort of sand dune, but they were keeping the distance. So my guide had to run over to them, and gradually they were coming closer. And with that community, maybe not for the older generation, but the younger generation, it was their first time seeing a white person. And so they kept their distance because they are taught that, or they're told, if they touch a white person, they're going to burst into smoke, into flames.
Yeah, and they're quite spiritual.
Yeah, so if you walk towards them,
well,
very superstitious. Yeah, and then further up north, this is where it gets a bit odd. I was warned about this by my Malagasy logistics manager, but it's one thing seeing it. We could come across a community in the distance. We were in the jungle, the very interior of Madagascar, high on the plateau where it's mountainous jungles, and we can see a community in the distance, which was great. That there's food, there's water, maybe directions as well. But they had also clocked us. So by the time we arrived at that community, they had run and they were now hiding in the bush completely. And you could shout out what you like, they're not coming out.
Yeah.
And it was weird because we would come across people along the way that they would spot you, they would drop everything, turn around and sprint either back on themselves or even down these cliff faces, roll down, get back up and carry on running.
And what, like,
Did that feel
it was
super weird?
Super weird.
Yeah,
it was,
people running away.
Yeah, and there was this one guy eventually, another community that stayed. He must have been the sheriff of that. And these are like mud huts, these are very, very basic communities. And this one that I'm talking about now, it wasn't on the map.
Right.
So we were sort of walking through. We didn't expect to come across a community at all.
And what, like, okay, I'm going to sound really white and tourist here, but my image in my mind is like Apocalypto, where they've got like tattoos and all these like, just really tribe, like born in that area. Yeah. Is that what people look like, or is that different? Like,
I think in
the stereotype of what we see on like films and different things.
Definitely in some areas.
Okay.
Papua New Guinea, for sure. Amazon, definitely. Madagascar, they weren't.
It takes me back to like the film Ace Ventura, when the tribe meets Jim Carrey. First time. But it's like,
and he's there like spinning his balance
the thing out. But
no, it was fascinating
incredible.
though. Yeah, these are again just barefoot, something around their private parts. And that's it. Carrying stuff on their heads as well, balancing it. And this one guy, he was the one that didn't run, the sheriff. And I was asking him, translating, why are they running? And that is when it was translated, like, these people haven't seen a Westerner. They don't even like the Malagasy locals, so they won't venture off the mountains to go down to the coast. It's like it's a massive island.
Just
if
to
they
see
went down,
community,
even if they saw someone else, they'd be like. And I found that is when the French ruled over 60 years ago. They were brutal, and so the new generation is sort of left with these stories, these horrific stories. They see a white person, they're gone, because they don't know things have changed necessarily.
The scariest thing you said about that Congo walk that you're thinking of doing is the idea, because the idea of animals would be a great experience, and I'd be saying something that, but the idea of someone else or people actually hunting you to eat you is like,
the people are a different ballgame.
That's like, and it's you're in their environment.
Yeah,
they've got their own weapons or whatever they're using.
And I faced that as well. I faced where the people have been inhospitable with you.
Right.
Where I came across, I was in the jungle and I was trying to hide from the bandits of Madagascar, because the bandits are pretty brutal. They have better artillery than the officers, than the military, because the military spend too much time drinking. So when they come head to head with the bandits don't drink. They fuck them up and they steal their weapons. So we wanted to avoid the bandits in case they took a liking to my rucksack. And to me, in terms of, they would steal me, they'd shoot my two guides. This is what my guide was scared about. They'd take me and hold me ransom to ask money from the government. So we were in the jungle hiding, but then we got wind that the bandits were also using the jungle to hide from the military. So we're like, fuck. Do we stay in the jungle and risk the bandits, or do we exit the jungle and risk the military? So we exited, and we came across this one military officer who was drunk, wasted, and he just looked at me and he was swaying. Aggression on his face was serious, and he growled at me. He just went, like he just, hated seeing me right there and then. Had his gun, and the strap was over his shoulder, and he was sort of holding me at gunpoint, and the strap kept slipping off his shoulder, and he kept catching it almost by the trigger, with the barrel pointing at me and Joe, my two other guides, and we were just sort of like avoiding it. And we were, what do we do? Do we attempt to like tackle him quickly, because he is pretty close and he's pretty drunk, or do we like show him the passport and just go with everything he says? And next minute, two more officers came over, and they were a bit more sober. They were more reasonable. But then a crowd formed from a nearby community, and there was one guy trying to break past the crowd to fight me because he thought I was French, and they don't like the French. And it was this hecticness of a drunken officer with a gun, another guy being pushed back, kept pointing at me, shouting stuff, like holding his fist up, and it's like, fucking hell.
Mate, your like intuition and your gut feeling must have saved you so many times.
Maybe it's just luck, but there's
obviously there is a bit of luck to it as well. But in terms of like the decisions you've made, considering like you're super young and you've done all these crazy trips, like at any point something.
I think so, right? And I think it's because I started so young. Like I didn't even touch base. So let me quickly touch base on some of the early adventures. What got me to do Mongolia in the first place, and before scuba diving and Muay Thai, is I was pretty much traveling around Southeast Asia and Australia, trekking the Himalayas illegally, on the border of Pakistan with no permit. I was told to go down on my knees if we come across a military officer, put our thumbs behind our ears and say, I think it's Allah Rigby, repeatedly, and they might let us go. So there was this adventure that tied in then with, because it was a shoestring budget, we had barely any money. The first adventure was the Vietnam cycle. So we were like, we're sick of this tourist route. sharing the same photos, stories and experiences the rest of the other tourists. We didn't want that. We wanted to integrate with the locals more. And we ended up purchasing a bicycle for $10. We had no pump, no puncture repair kit, no technology, no map. And off we went, no helmet, no nothing, on a bike with no gears or suspension, 1,100 plus miles, hit by mopeds, dodged by lorries, chased by dogs. The last day we cycled 45 hours straight because we were going to be late to cross the border and our visa would have expired, and that, you get in trouble then. And it was these sort of adventures, and then crossing into Thailand, because there was a local guy that we saw with a machete who said he'll teach us how to survive in the jungle, and if we keep walking across the border, again illegally, into Myanmar when it was closed down, this was 2010, there's a community there that we can sort of spend a bit of time with. It was just this guy on the edge of the jungle, and we agreed, probably recklessly, we were kind of like, a random Thai guy with a machete inviting us into the jungle, but we went with it, and it was an amazing experience. We were learning how to survive in the jungle, berries that act as mosquito repellent, how to build rafts to cross river, or shelter using natural resources. Mate, so it was all of this that was fueling the fire when I was settled as a scuba diver. And I was kind of like, this is great, 2 years settling as a scuba diver, Muay Thai fighter, but
that's incredible.
I'm missing the earlier, like, how can I pursue this as a career? And that's what sort of brought Mongolia.
It's me like scared of like getting in a taxi in Turkey, and he's like done all these like yellow.
People can be dodging, aren't they? People are the scariest on my journeys.
That's the scariest we had. We crossed the Romanian-Serbian border at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I said, like, let's do it when we're during light. I said, please, let's just leave early. We're all being lazy, and we got up late, and we crossed the from Romania into Serbia, and there was some really, like, I'll be honest, like some pretty scary people there.
I bet.
Waiting for us to come across.
I loved it. I was joking in the back, and he was going, Matt, what are you doing? Stop. And they were really specific, weren't they? They were like, if you've got any cannabis, you're done.
They said you're going straight to Serbian prison.
Straight to Serbian prison.
And they took everything out the car, all of the other...
checked everything.
So what was that? Did you just have to stay off the radar and not come across? Or would they not check your passport and
They checked everything. We got through and we carried on driving. But that's like the worst sort of thing we've come up against, right? So trying to get to the next restaurant. So no, seriously, that's what it is.
Trying to find the 5-star hotel. Like.
Wayne's not Google Maps.
Mate, I'm going to throw this out there. Don't hold it to me, but I'd love to like go on a little adventure with you, or something that's not going to kill me.
Let's do it.
But I would shake your hand and I'll do that. Like when you're, I'm going to keep in contact. Whenever you're doing these things,
for sure.
I'm going to just go, right, Ash.
I'm always
I might just jump on one of these ones. It might be no, and then yes to like,
Are you looking at? Would you look at doing water or snow?
Yeah, I think so, because with the Yangtze one was the river, the Madagascar was jungle, and the Mongolia was desert. So the only one that I've really missed is polar, I guess. But then not only that, is I've sort of gotten a name for myself for hiking and surviving, but that's not how it started. It started through sort of martial arts, through scuba diving, through more extreme sports. I've got my skydiving license, my paramotoring license, all of it. Okay. And I want to put together a trip, more sort of land, air and sea, proper sort of action man style, covering the length of a country via land, air and sea.
Okay.
It's like a survival triathlon.
It would be like a survival triathlon. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it would be similar to that.
You've got the name, right?
Yeah, jump out of a helicopter to start the trip.
Amazing.
Get the paramotor and then just fly sort of, towards the foot of a mountain range. You can hike the mountain peak and then do something off that. You scuba dive. It could be South Africa with the sardine migration, or free dive, whatever it might be, along a certain distance.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
Think all of these hooked in together would be like,
I want to ask, Ash, like, you've obviously done all these amazing had all these amazing experiences. When you come back to normality, and you hear about the army and people in the army that come back and they suffer from PTSD, do you have any of those like nightmares and things that sort of wake you up, hot, cold sweats in the middle of the night to then, freak you out when you are back in a normal sort of lifestyle? And then what makes you go back into thinking, right, okay, I want to jump back in again?
Yeah.
That's my normal, not this normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, that's a great question. That is a great, I don't get asked that much at all. Because that's one thing
that's really rare for him, just so you know.
Talk shit.
That's probably the best question he's ever asked in about 25 episodes.
I'm intrigued to know.
Yeah.
Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
He talks shit.
We're going to wind up.
Sorry.
on, you just that's that fucking moment. He was going to go.
You just, me and James's eyes just went right up like that.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. My parents mentioned, it was my mum actually after the Yangtze trip. She came back and she just noticed that my character wasn't dampened in any way. It's like I still hold that enthusiastic energy that I had at age 19. And so it's never really hit me. I've never really had PTSD. I don't know why, because I have faced some, almost lost my life, seen some horrific things. But then I think when I come back from an expedition, I maybe it's a bad thing, but I focus so much more on the positives than the negatives. Not to say I didn't learn from the negatives, because I did, but it's because of the positives that I remember that makes me want to pursue another adventure.
It's got to be
you leave all the kind of bad energy out there.
And
PTSD from the army is like when you're sort of sometimes being pushed into something you don't want. Right? You're going like full willingly, like wanting to go into this. Like on the sort of side of like Jay's question, would you say that there's like, would you say when you're going into it, you're running away from anything?
No, but I have had that before as well. Yeah, I've had that.
If you've got something mad going in, like say Jay, you've got something going on in your head, I've got something going on in my head. Could you imagine running into that? You're not going to be thinking about all the worries that you'd normally have.
Yeah, for sure. And no, I think it started because even how it begun, I wasn't really looking into it as a career. And I wasn't even looking into ancient sort of explorers, none of that. I think it happened organically to get off the beaten track and to save money. And then I found this sort of niche and this passion, really sort of enjoyed it. Yes, faced a lot of adversity, but that's how I also visualize, I guess. So that's what I was going to say. It's the mental preparation. Some people don't know what they're mentally getting prepared. If they're told to go here, go that, ordered to do something, they don't have enough time to really prepare. And I know that a lot of people visualize, but I bet you 9 times out of 10, most people visualize the highs and, waving the flag or crossing the finish line. Whereas I'll flip that. I'll be the total opposite. I'll visualize every single bad thing that can possibly go wrong. Even when I'm training physically, I'm overplaying things, wolves, dehydration, bears, sand blizzards, isolation. And I'm building them up to be so extreme in my head that if one of those incidents were to happen on an expedition,
you're ready.
I'm set. I can just tackle it. It's not a case of it happened by surprise and now I'm panicked or shocked and then I slip into the flight instead of fight. It comes as like, okay, I've got malaria, but I did know that this was a possibility with Madagascar and now I've got to overcome it.
And that's the healthy thing. It's like acceptance of what could happen. And that's And
it also helps you then to plan, because a lot of people think it's maybe daredevilish risk in my life. But if there was a risk element to it in terms of certain death or 50-50, I wouldn't do it. I would, because it is very meticulous attention to detail, understanding and researching why no one's attempted it before, or where they failed. Why did they fail? How can I do better?
Because I remember Joe Dispenza, I was listening to a video of his and he said that if you put yourself through something mentally, your brain sometimes cannot differentiate between that and the actual experience. So if you're viscerally putting your brain into, okay, this is what 400 days of isolation is going to feel like, and you prepare yourself, then when it comes, you've already been there once, which is going to be a lot easier the next time. So how do you sort of do that? Is that before you go to bed at night, you're just really thinking about what this feels like?
Yeah, I think it's every day. I think it's every day before an adventure, in training camp, also with the mapping. One thing that got to me most was when people were saying that it's impossible to cross Mongolia. That really hit me because I was so inexperienced and never been there, that what I did, I went to the Royal Geographic Society with my logistics manager and I actually broke it down and I said, right, okay, if there's an impossible day, which one of these days is the day that I fail? Which one is the most dangerous day? Right. And we actually looked at every single day, looking at 15 to 20 miles across this map, mountains, desert, you name it, and every day was achievable. And so when I broke it down like that, all as I had to then do was visualize the challenges that I will face. And I was saying, if there's going to be wolves, expect to be attacked. If there's going to be blizzards, expect them to be the biggest and the baddest. At 5 a.m. whilst I'm flipping my tractor tire in my back garden, beating it with a sledgehammer, I was just really, really preparing for the war.
Visualizing it.
I scared the shit out of myself that I would have nightmares before I set off for the journey,
There's a really good way to think about that, because like if you went now in your bed at night tonight and you thought about dying, you would cause all these different things going on in your body. If you thought about being in an aeroplane crash, like you're in the comfort of your own home, your mind knows that there's no way that you're going to be dying in the airplane tonight, but you can still put that in your brain. And you can still send those signals. You can create those emotions. You can create those things. So.
And then if there's anything less than that, it's like, wow. So if you're expecting sort of dehydration, but in your mind, when you were training, it felt a lot worse because you just put the worst on yourself. And now, yes, you're suffering, but it doesn't feel as bad as what I thought it would feel like.
Yeah, just low expectations.
And the benefits of it, which I'm going to speak for you, but surely, you know, the two main benefits I can see is lit on your face is you're traveling the world, and the appreciation of life that you have for when you do come back is like...
For sure.
It's cloud nine all the time.
Yeah.
Because some people have highs and lows. You know, it's cloud nine all the time because you're just like, this is gold.
Yeah,
this is heaven compared to what I've been through.
Yeah.
It's incredible, man.
Yeah. How do you find time for like just, you know, the normal things that, you know, men need, like just love, companionship, sex, whatever, you know, just the normal things. Like, do you have to squeeze that in the time that you're, you know, back home?
Yes. When I started traveling age 19, I was very much on the travel route. So there was plenty of all of that. But then I've got a girlfriend now, 2.5 year long relationship.
Oh, nice.
But she wasn't there until about 6 months after the Yangtze trip. So I've never done a big time trip in a relationship. But the most recent one where I was away for 4.5 months following the Great Wall, that was 21,000 kilometers, not by walking. I think that was maybe the hardest, whereby I've got someone back here that I love and I'm away, you know, in China for 4.5 months. But again, you know, you come back and you appreciate everything so much more, and you appreciate her so much more. Especially and the conveniences and comfort and ease of everything, you know.
Right. Especially with the stress that she's probably going through as well.
And she's very reasonable. She knows that this is my career, you know, there is going to be times, and she's very sort of ambitious, driven herself.
He's built it into, like, it's the same as like what I do with filming. He's built it into his lifestyle now. He loves the traveling. He loves this. Like, it's all built into. So his enjoyment is everything.
Yeah. And then you're right. But I've got that support, which is the main thing, isn't it? I think when you're away for
that's it.
So,
Ash, that's amazing. Incredible story. Honestly,
but
it's really like blown my mind with lots of things you said.
I've got really so many more stories. We're going to have to do a take two.
Absolutely.
And maybe we'll do a little trip if possible.
We should do a trip and then come back and do a follow-up.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
That would be really cool.
That would be really cool.
We should.
When are you looking to do the Congo river?
You know what? Unless sort of Discovery comes with a multi-million-dollar budget, I probably won't do that until I'm kind of like, okay, it's worth the risk. Because a lot of these, especially Mongolia, came back, didn't earn much money at all. It's taken me a while to get where I am now. So that if I was to do the Congo, it would need to be
a lot of planning, man. A lot of funding. You know? There's a lot of things that got to go into it.
Actually, it's really amazing to hear, man. I'm like genuinely, you know, obviously when you listen to a story, you're putting yourself there, and I'm just thinking how amazing it would be. So thanks for sharing those stories.
Thank you for having me.
And
Thank you so much.
Part 2.
Yeah, definitely.
Ash Dykes. Thank you, man.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers.